Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16. This chapter focuses on something that all of us could use, and that is reflection of some qualities that would help you in life and others that would not help you. And those that would help you are called in this chapter Daivi Sampat. That means qualities or virtues that are practical, that are healthy, that are useful, that will take you on a smooth sailing boat. Conversely, Asuri Sampat are those traits that hold us back. They're those traits that it's as if riding on a boat that's constantly swaying left and right, and you can't come out of it because that's the only boat you've got. The only mind you've got is your own mind, and your mind's giving you swaying left and right, and you just want a break. You want to get off. You realize you can't get off that boat because it's the only boat you've got. So the only thing you can do is refine that boat. And so Asuri Sampat will help us see those things that hold you back in every way imaginable. Those things that you try every day to come out of, that the whole world is, under the, more or less a spell under in some ways. So no one's really completely free from Asuri Sampat, those qualities that are unhelpful. And at the same time, Daivi Sampat, again, these are wonderful qualities such as generosity. Generosity, you see, isn't just about giving. But when you give, what happens in you when you give something, when you contribute? You relinquish the sense of mine. When you give something that's close to you, and you, in that moment, you may feel a sting, but what you gain is something much larger, and that is your freedom from not having to hold on to that thing which had its grip on you. So in this sense, generosity, for example, is Daivi Sampat, healthy virtues that will help you clean up your mind so that you're able to think clearly, enjoy the world as God's creation, feel better about yourself, and have just a better time living. As long as something remains unconscious, that hasn't been looked at, it is the very thing that drives your life. So unless we talk about this, unless we mention it, there are certain principles guiding our life without even knowing what they are. So this will help you bring it to the surface. All you have to do is just hear it. In the world, we have lots of Asuri Sampat. They call it, sometimes these unhealthy, in a more, a different sense, you can call it demonic traits, right? But we don't use demonic traits, we just call them unhealthy traits. A lot of things are disguised as beautiful things, but they're actually Asuri Sampat. In other words, they separate you. They cause to feel anguish and separation. If you look at statistics, the one of the highest causes for depression amongst teenagers, especially girls, I read, is social media, because they're constantly looking at so-called happy faces and they're saying my life is not anywhere near that. So this is Asuri Sampat built in even in social media. And so we need to come out of this by mentioning what are you subjecting yourself to that is unhealthy for you. Okay? So this chapter specifically deals with common down-to-earth human traits that we need to look at. And so this is an introduction, starting with verse 1, and then we will go straight into discussing them. I'm going to chant verse 1, 2, and 3 together. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Abhayam Sattvasam Shuddhihi Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Danam Damascha Yajnascha Swadhyayastapa Arjavam Ahimsa Satyama Krodhaha Tyaga Shantirapaishunam Daya Bhuteshvalo Luptvam Mardavam Hrirachapalam Tejakshama Drakti Shaucham Adroho Natimanita Bhavanti Sampadam Daivim Abhijatasya Bharata. So let's go into Abhayam, fearlessness. There's two kinds of fears. The first one is what we call intrinsic fear. This is, you can say, Ishwara's design. This is natural fear that you have when your child is in danger. So naturally the mother will run over and protect her child. Or you have a car's coming towards you, and you will just move away quickly. Right? So this you cannot get rid of. Wise or not, this is intrinsic fear. This is, you can call it God's design. And it's there to protect you. If we didn't have fear, you can just imagine as a child, how many times would you put a little finger inside a plug? Did you ever do that? Yeah, I did too. So this means our fear was temporarily blocked. But now we wouldn't do that. So, or as, for instance, you put your hand on a stove and then you remember that. So it helps you stay alive. So we could say that this kind of fear is called biological wisdom. It's built in. If a person doesn't have wisdom of their own, they are biologically endowed with natural fear. It keeps you alive. Now, we also need to distinguish that kind of fear from psychological fear. If the first one is natural fear, the second one we can call unnatural fear. That's the key, discerning both. What is unnatural fear? It is where, for example, something close to you, you feel is going to collapse. In other words, you catastrophize. You make this big image of its collapse, of its imminent demise, of its imminent removal, of its destruction, and it scares you. A common example is, I can relate with my mom when I was a young child, going to high school. She was always worried about me, So there's, on one hand, there's a natural concern, but on the other hand, there's like, oh, are you okay? And, and there's so much protection. I'm thinking, you don't need to protect me so much. I can take care of myself. So this is what we call psychological fear being mixed in with a natural, healthy concern. So when we psychologically blow things up in our mind, then what does that do? It pulls you down. It stifles you. So this is one psychological fear. Another, what does this do? What do you think this does to you? Psychological fear. When you imagine something happening not good to you or to someone else, what do you think is the consequence? Blocks your doing, blocks your ability to act and do what is to be done. It produces a snake, so you end up fixing a problem, such as a girlfriend comes back and I think she's been somewhere else, and I've created an image that, that is not keeping with the reality. That means it's my own personal stuff. And so she comes back and I attack, not her, I attack snake, my idea superimposed upon her. And so she has to deal with something that is non-existent. Why? Because I've created an idea in my own mind. So it's not a small thing at all. There was a book called Think Like a Warrior, and it talks about athletes. And they say that one of the most common stiflers or blockages of living one's life as they're meant to live, the number one fear, do you know what it is? Dying, public speaking, there's something else. Number one fear that stops athletes and those performing is judgment. Judgment of performing bad and being seen by people, and thereby I don't want to. I would rather remain safe than to be judged by others. And that judgment, that is the snake. That is psychological fear. So number one blockage is not God's design fear. It is our own psychological fear. And some of the things that we can do for this is to reframe. So if you have a certain story about your life falling in some unhealthy ways, or fear about anything, then you can retell a story. That means what happens is we tell a story that is disadvantageous to you. That means it's not helpful to you. So if you retell that story, if you change that story, change the meaning, you ask, what does this mean? What else could this mean? That already starts to change that snake, that personal notion. So if number one fear is of judgment, then what question could you then instead pose to yourself to at least remove some of that psychological fear? How else could you look at that? Not necessarily a question. How else could you look at that? Suppose I say, hey, come speak on a microphone. Okay? And it's like, instant. We know, right? There's instant fear. It's there. What would you have to say to yourself to at least reduce that fear by 1%?
Well, statistics say 5% will like it, 5% won't like it, 90% don't care.
Take the statistics. Yeah. People will like you, people won't like you. That's fine. What else could you say?
At least I did my best. I tried.
Brilliant. At least I did my best. I'm going to go up with an intention to do my best, to focus on giving value. It takes the focus off you. That's such a powerful thing to do. I always say to people, hey, you got fear of speaking? Just focus on what are you going to deliver? What will you share? Focus on the group. How can I help you? You instantly take that spotlight of yourself. That's one of the powerful techniques in public speaking that they do. Another thing is, see, if we look at this universe, we need to understand it is not an unfair universe. There's an often fear that arises that God's going to punish me. Something bad is going to happen to me. Something that is, tomorrow I will, get punished. That's not true. It is a completely unbiased order, impartial order. There's no person out there to get you. No one's going to get you. That is a psychological idea. So we need to understand this universe is completely fair. If I am aligned and I do what is to be done and I do my best, there's nothing to worry about. Really nothing to worry about. And if someone's got a problem, hey, that's still your own projections. That's your projection. That's got nothing to do with me. And at the same time, you maybe consider, maybe they have had some feedback from me, and I'll consider that. So we don't always throw people's rejection, we don't always throw their criticisms away. We say, okay, what was valid in this criticism? Okay, so maybe I do need to work on my, speaking more from emotion, from my life story. Maybe less from head, more from life story. But then you say, what do I do not need here? Well, the delivery. Because often when people deliver criticism, they do two things. One, they offer you good advice. But that good advice gets overshadowed by their delivery style. And most of us deliver or ignore, throw out both because of their delivery style. So you have to recognize what is useful. Let me extract what is useful and let me throw away their harshness. That is a brilliant way and powerful way to gladly want to receive feedback and just throw away the harshness. Fearlessness. Okay? So this means if there is some fear in reference to something's going to happen bad, it's a voice, it's a common voice. Something bad is going to happen to me. Understand That is psychological fear telling you something needs to change. Change the story. Because that is not true. It's simply not true. Therefore, it's an indicator, change the story. What good will come tomorrow? What can I give tomorrow? What else can I share tomorrow? Okay. Next is sattva samshuddhi, purity of mind. Okay. Now, instead of sharing more advice here, I'm going to share a story. And this story will show you how your mind, because it is purity of mind, how a pure mind can help you and how a non-pure mind can sabotage you. So the story is called I think it's called the Brahman and the goose, right? Brahman is like a priest. So the Brahman had a wife, and her name was Devadatta, I think Devadatta. And they were married, they were a happy couple, and they had a child. Their baby was small and was stored in a lovely room with a cot. There was a baby customized room. And they were very busy, so they asked their neighbor if the neighbor could help. And the neighbor thought, hey, why don't you bring a mongoose? And mongoose is like a beaver or something, looks like a beaver. Yeah, they stand on two legs, like Timon and Pumbaa, the small one. Yeah, yeah. So take a mongoose. We have a spare mongoose, and we will train the mongoose to take care of your baby. And so they brought in the mongoose, and the mongoose loved the baby at first sight. So the mongoose is always taking care of the baby's cot because there were many snakes around. So one day, the Brahman and the wife were gardening, and they had a huge farm, so they were quite far out. And then a cobra started to slither in through the doors, because at that time they just had a hut, there was no doors. And as the cobra was reaching nearer to the baby's cot, the mongoose immediately took action and fought a violent battle against the cobra, and eventually prevailed, won. And so the cobra lay there, and the mongoose had blood all over its mouth. So now when the wife heard this commotion from a distance, she had good hearing, she came in, and she saw firstly the mongoose, and instantly she assumed the mongoose, who loved the baby and protected the baby for all of its life, killed the baby. And she instantly, impulsively couldn't bear the pain, so she took a stick that was nearby, and she violently struck the mongoose on the head, and he died on the spot. But as she came inside the room, she found a dead cobra, and she realized that the mongoose has just saved the life of the baby. And she was absolutely distraught. She realized, oh my God, I assumed too quickly. I had all these thoughts that the mongoose was at fault. I didn't trust the mongoose. My mind was, polluted with these thoughts. I was, thinking impulsively. And then Brahman came in and he said exactly the same thing. Dear wife, I wish you could, pause for a moment and think about before you get emotionally taken over. So the wife thought about this, and now she shared her news with her friends and says, dear friends, before acting, take a breath and think about just a moment before you act. And that much enough is to introduce that purity of mind, that little pause before acting. Just one short breath is enough to bring that purity of mind back. So that is sattva samshuddhi. Before emotions take you over, you take over emotions with one breath, and you introduce that discerning mind. And then we have jnana yoga vyavastitihi. Steadiness in contemplation is the difference between hearing something and it remaining classroom knowledge, and thinking about it long enough so that it becomes your knowledge. You own it. It is now mine. It is inseparable from your personality. So why do we do, or let's ask like this, how, and this is the important question, how do you convert wisdom into everyday experience? How do you convert wisdom, these teachings, and let it shine, percolate through your personality? So the environment can also make a difference, because the environment, when you see something, is an anchor. It keeps you the same person. So when we come out of the environment, at least for a moment, we no longer have those anchors. And that much is enough to create some space and make a positive change. It's very hard to make a change if one's in an environment that's holding them in their old self. Because you got so many anchors. Be like the old self, be like the old self, be like the old self. You got 5 anchors and you only got one mind just trying to deal with it all. So what do? I change the environment, at least for a moment, temporary, 30 days, or which is why when we go to places like this, it's so helpful, because we're taken out of our old environment. So the environment itself contributes to the change. What else do you do to integrate? Take something that's relevant for you and just stay with it. The staying, actually, there's a word for it, arjavam. Arjavam is being straightforward. Straightforward is when what you know, you deliberately take moments to speak it. And what you speak, you deliberately take moments to do it. Now, not something huge, something very, very small. For example, hey, tonight I will rest. I will take a shower, right? So I thought, I said, and I will do. Very easy. Now tomorrow, what I'm going to say, today I will build a house. I thought, oh, that's too much. It's too much over my ability. So in other words, arjavam is sticking to what you will truly follow through. So the question now poses, why do we not follow through what we know is to be followed through? What causes that discord? Definitely habits. Okay, so on one hand, you know what you should be doing, but on the other hand, maybe there's a huge like for this. Maybe there's a huge kind of a ice cream over there. Now the question is, what are you going to do about it? Well, one thing that we can do is have what we call an intellect of discernment. You said discernment. Saying, what is the real opportunity here? I have an opportunity in this moment. You know, here's a piece of wisdom and here's an opportunity. What can I apply in this moment right now? And that's an opportunity for me. So every situation is an opportunity to apply the wisdom. Every situation is calling, hey, apply your wisdom. And if I don't see a situation as an opportunity, I'm not going to apply any wisdom. So maybe it requires a perception change. The challenges in our life are not really challenges, they're opportunities to apply this very wisdom. Doesn't require much doing, just changing perception. Like I said yesterday, I used to have a thing about slow drivers until one day it just struck me, right? Right? Why am I doing this? They're normal drivers. They're old, probably wise people. And then I said, no, stop. This is ridiculous. I'm just going to turn this into an opportunity to develop patience. And now I love it. Really do. I want a slow driver in front of me because I turned an opportunity into a practice. That means I'm using now this knowledge and putting it inside the challenge. Danam, charity. This is the next one. The first thing when we think about charity, right? Money. But charity in the Vedic culture is not just money. Anything that you give of yourself, time, energy, effort, your knowledge, that is called charity. Sharing the knowledge, having satsangs, meeting up once a month, giving your genuine time, that is charity. And every time you give, you find out how big you are. because only someone that's already abundant can give. Every time you give, you come closer to the nature of the Lord, because who is the biggest giver? What is the biggest giver? The Lord is the biggest giver. He's always giving us everything. So every time I align myself to this, I discover a certain vastness about myself. Now we have something called what's called sattvic giving. That means healthy giving. You give, to whom do you give? You give to those who will use it wisely. So if I see someone that is holding a bottle of brandy and they're asking me for money, then you can make a decision what you want to do. But generally what it says is that there is a different kind of giving. A sattvic giving, a discerning giving, is recognizing, is this the kind of person that I know would take good advantage of what I'm about to give them? Will they misuse it and only propagate their existing asuri sampats, their existing ideas, or is it going to help them come out of it? That is the first one. That means your discernment towards, is your giving to to whom are you giving? Is my giving timely? Is it even needed? Is it timely? Is it in the right time? Maybe it's not right in this moment, but maybe when they ask, or if they ask, that's another aspect of giving. And when you give, the receiver should never feel like I'm a small person. So how do you know you've given in the most appropriate attitude? When you give, the receiver feels truly thankful and safe, and you feel humble. If the receiver feels smaller, that wasn't giving. That's called tamasic giving. Sometimes people are reluctant to receive. The world is about giving and receiving, isn't it? It's always a mixture of giving and receiving. One of my Sanskrit students, she said, okay, now you've taught me for 1 year, 1.5 years, or whatever it was. I'm, having a little bit problems, she said to me, receiving your texts, because I built this garden of paradigms, right? So she was like one of my earliest, I gave it to her very early before anyone else. And she said to me, I'm reluctant to receive this and I thought, why? Because she said to me, because I feel like I will own you. I will be forced to own you in the future. I feel like my free will is going to be taken away and I will be obligated to give you in the future. And this was very new kind of thinking for me. I never thought people would think like this. And I thought, oh, okay, so this is another reason why people are reluctant to receive, because they feel like to receive, I am now obligated in the future to give back to you, and my free will be stripped away.
Yeah, that's the reason people want to sell you something, give you all those free things, because that's the mind is doing it to give something back.
And I guess it's also imprinted in our marketing department.
It's
Yeah.
one of the principles of marketing.
Reciprocity, right?
Yeah.
Wow. What's the correction to this? How do I come to the point where I can equally receive and give? Equally receive and give. Actually, Krishna says, all gifts are mine. Nothing is yours. If you think something's yours, well, even your body, onto which everything else you think is mine, even that is mine. Therefore, if I can't even let go of my Walkman, who says Walkman nowadays, right? If I can't let go of my... Where did that come from? Remember those things? Oh man. Have you heard of Walkman? Oh my God. Wow. If I can't give away my iPhone, okay. How will I give my body away? So giving trains us to understand nothing's mine. Nothing, because that's a fact, nothing's mine. So I can die in peace. Yes, Lord, take this body. It's time. I've done the best I could. I have no fear, no regrets. Take it. Number 5, damaha, pausing before physically reacting. This one is very easy and very effective. See, our senses tend to hijack us. So this means we see something that's appealing and immediately we respond, like just bah, right? It's just a program, it's trained. So damaha intercepts this. It's like a mental circuit breaker, and it just intercepts this first response. And it says, no, take a deep breath. Now, what is to be done? So damaha is that first, if everything fails, right? First thing, damaha, physically intercept with a deep breath. Slow breathing. They say slow breathing slows down the dopamine release in anticipation of getting what I'm going to get. If you see a candy in front of you, right? And you go, the moment you look at that, what happens in your brain is your dopamine, the feel-good chemical, starts to be released. And it's to anticipate getting it. And the moment you take a deep breath and you exhale slowly, you instantly stop that dopamine release. See, we're also very trained, and we have to be trained to think impulsively, because we are grown up through evolution to protect ourselves. So whenever we see danger, what happens? Limbic system. Adrenaline, limbic system just kicks in, like respond, save yourself. And that was very important for millions of years. But we live in a modern time, and so damaha comes and saves you. It says, deep breath, and immediately it takes your focus from the limbic system to the prefrontal cortex. This is the newest part of the brain at the front that's able to think, that's able to discern. That's what damaha does. From back to forwards. Scientifically proven. It makes you more, it trains your observer mind. We keep on saying, observe your thoughts. Observe your thoughts. If I can't observe my thoughts, I get taken for the run, I get taken for the ride. That's because my observer mind has not been developed.
No breathing.
Yeah, no breathing. Hold your breath. Yajna, this is the next one. Any physical action that helps you connect with God. Any physical action that brings Ishvara into your life is yajna. And one way to explain it is, suppose you're cooking a meal for someone special and they mean something to you. Now, when you're preparing this meal for them, what are you thinking in your mind? Are you thinking of how you're going to get put on a pedestal, what a good cook you are, and how you're the greatest person? Or are you thinking about that lovely person that you care about? You're doing that cooking with love. You're like, yeah, there's a certain outpouring of love because this person is someone special to you. Now that Purusha, that person is Ishvara, is the Lord. And for whom am I cooking my life for? For the Lord, because there's only Lord here. So this means that yajna converts any ordinary action like cooking food, like pruning the shrubs, mowing the grass, cleaning the walls, as a spiritual practice. You understand, hey, this is all being done in the play of God. This is all God's play. I'm giving this to the altar of Ishvara. And this increases your devotion. Now something that's so mundane becomes something that's a little bit more special. You have a connection. You're talking to the Lord through action. I am now speaking to the Lord in the form of my dear students. You're now listening to the Lord in the form of this person. And one thing that we can do is before eating, I call this airplane mode. When you fly on an airplane, I have never ever seen anyone pray on an airplane. No, Indian, white, Asian, I've never seen anyone even acknowledge for one moment. So yajna is a little prayer. Thank you, Lord, for this digestifier. Thank you for the plate. Whoever has cooked this food, thank you. Thank you for the weather, the rains, the sun, for the eater, for the waitress, for the digestion, for the cells and nutrients and the vitamins. Thank you. What about when we wake up? We can say, today, let me do the best that I possibly can to those that are around me. Today, let me be the best boyfriend, the best girlfriend I've ever been. Today, let me make a lovely, wonderful day for them. And let me see divinity in their face. Simple decision, first thing in the morning. Now we have two kinds of yajnas before I move forward. The first one is called complex, and this we will see in Mundaka Upanishad, such as Agnihotra. These are complex rituals that involved the priests usually do in India. And the second one is called smarta, or simple. What are simple yajnas? Prayer, which I've shown you. Puja, that means anything that, for example, having a picture, right, of a deity, and this deity represents something to you. That is worship, that is puja. It may not mean anything to you, it means something to me. So what is your symbol? What is your Saraswati? For me, Saraswati. What is your figure, your idol, that when you look at it invokes emotion of divinity in it? There is chanting. Why do you think chanting is always associated to spirituality? It's not just chanting. When people chant, they just feel so connected to themselves. That's also yajna. Next one, swadhyaya. Recitation of one's branch of knowledge. Your mind is like, we often say in Vedanta, like a mirror. Okay? Now a mirror, how do they say in American? Mirror. In Australian, mirror. So which one would you prefer now? I'll say both. Mirror. So your mind's like a mirror. And your mirror gets dusty. Every time you walk into the world, it gets dusty. And as it gets dusty, it becomes hard to reflect the sunlight. It becomes hard to reflect the nature of your fullness, which manifests as happiness. So whenever a person is happy, in that moment, the mirror is clear. When the happiness goes away, what happens? Dust comes on, and what puts the dust back onto the mirror? It is your own desire. I need more. And that's how desire constantly sabotages one's success. I got this, I'm temporarily relieved. It's like a leaf blower. It blows all the dust of the mirror, and you're happy because it's reflecting the fullness of who you are. But very quickly, another desire comes in. I'm happy, but I want it to be like this. Now I want more. And instantly that more covers the mirror again, and then happiness is gone. So what people are trying to do all life is take a leaf blower and blow the mind, right? Feel good through relationships, through what have they nowadays, through computer games. Why do you think kids can play computer games for 8 hours a day? Because while you're playing the computer game, you have a clean mirror. You're not thinking about problems. Why do you think men can play poker for 3 hours or more? And the moment they go out of poker, they can't concentrate more than a couple of seconds. Because when you find something that really brings that joy, you will do that no matter what the circumstances are. So what is your thing that brings you joy? That clears that mirror and is keeping with, is ethical. So many things, okay? The point is, whenever you are happy, you're in touch with your fullness, which is why it's so addictive. So what is the most addictive thing? Is love, making love addictive, or is your fullness addictive? The love, making love is just a means to your fullness. So the point is, we all have different means, but we all want the same exact fullness. If we all want the exact same fullness, it is a non-dual reality then. It's not like you want one kind of fullness, I want another kind of, I just want fullness, you want fullness. What is reality? Fullness. What is reality? Aksharam Brahma, that which is full. All you want is yourself. What do you do with your likes and desires?
Or likes and dislikes.
Okay, likes and dislikes will always continue. They're just they're directed towards what is to be done. That's it. Likes and dislikes, there's nothing wrong or right about them. It only becomes a burden, your likes and dislikes, when they are overshadowing something that is much more important. Now, why do they overshadow what is something that is more important? Because I attribute more value onto that than this. So what do I have to do? I have to see what is my cost if I keep on doing this. What is the eventual cost in the future by pursuing these short-term, whatever you want to call it, chocolate like and dislike, right? Well, the cost is fatigue. The cost is, unhealthy body, aging. So in other words, one has to be very clear, what am I getting out of this short-term like and dislike, and is it worth it in the long run? And if you analyze, you will more often than not see that it's not worth it. Like I've thought, this cake, yeah, but, or whatever it is, right? Whatever it is. But what am I really getting out of this? Well, I lose my focus. I can't concentrate.
You have to use your intellect.
You have to use intellect.
But what if you haven't got that intellect or developed to that level?
Well, the person's going to learn. I mean, they're going to learn through pain, and eventually they're going to come to a point and say, this is not worth it. I mean, I can't speak for others, but I'm speaking for the one that has used the intellect. Yeah. I don't know how it is for those who don't have the intellect to use it, but I know it's hard. It's not easy to tell a child, hey, don't play computer games 5 hours. Say that. Not going to listen. So sometimes, right, we have to give people a chance to work out for themselves that it's not leading them anywhere. And as we said, Ishvara always pops the bubble. The person can hang around something for a long time, but I guarantee you they will see that sooner or later it is costing them more than they're actually gaining. And that takes time. When a person sees this is costing me more pain than it's gaining me benefits, the person starts to question and they start to change their life around. Why do you think people change their life around when the worst comes? That's what often happens. The worst comes only now. I need to make a change. So Ishvara forces you to eventually see something needs to change. But I don't want to get to that stage. Rather, do it before I get to that stage. So the life is always designed to show us what is not working. But I don't have to wait for life to show me that. Because if we wait, it's going to be very painful. Rather, let me ask right now, am I aligned with my true core values? Am I living my core vision? And what is my core vision? And what things in this world, if anything, are distracting me or moving me away from that? And how do you polish a dusty mirror? Through recitation of knowledge, re-involvement, re-involving yourself in the knowledge, surrounding yourself with the knowledge, living in the vision of the knowledge. Constantly, every day, finding a way to listen to podcasts or books or whatever it is, to constantly reshape the mind, to rewire those neurons, because it's so hard to do that as a grown-up. As a child, it's easy. So I have to reshuffle that through constant recitation. Memory studies say, whenever you find a way to ask questions and you have a hard time answering, that very hard time of answering is what reshapes your brain. The harder you work at it, the more you're able to understand it and the deeper it sinks in. It's fun, isn't it? So this is why we're given questions. To struggle at it. And when you struggle at it, ironically, that is the very thing that you need. That's going to put it now. So the Bloom's taxonomy The Bloom is from, where was he? Who was a German or someone? At the bottom, the least effective way where most people focus is memorization. If you just focus on memorizing, you're just using your instrument just to recite data. Right at the top is create. Create. I think over here is analyze. Somewhere over here is understand. But even if you understand something, you don't really know it until you are put on the spot and you have to create your own answers. You ask the question that says, go and improvise. What do you think about that? And you have to think, let my brain recreate, let the neurons come together. Struggle, create. So what do questions do? Right at the top, the highest form and the most effective way of learning and transforming knowledge into actuality is by creating. Through self-questioning. You create questions and then you struggle to answer them. Every time you struggle, the benefit is exponential, as good as all of these things put together. Purnamadav, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnam eva avashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.